This week on Quality Digest Live, we chat with Chad Keimel of Omnex Systems about the deadlines for the transitions to the 2015 versions of ISO 9001 and ISO 14001.
And plus, one man's journey to truth. That and more when we come back.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for September 30th, 2016. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Mike Richmond, publisher of Quality Digest.
And today you're exactly that. And
That's
I'm
right.
Quality Digest Editor-in-Chief, Dirk Ducharme. What will healthcare look like once millennials are in charge? And that was basically the thrust of the Knowledge at Wharton article, How Millennials, I never can say that word, How Millennials, just read the headline there on the screen. Consumers, those guys, will transform healthcare.
Well done.
There's way too many double consonants in there.
There's a lot.
And when we say in charge, I mean in charge as in the people who run the hospitals and design medical services, and in charge as in the people who will be demanding certain things from the healthcare system. The article is actually an interview with Steve Klasko, president of Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia. That's a medical school. He is also CEO of Jefferson Health and co-author of the book We Can Fix Healthcare. Also interviewed in the article was Nishad Rahman, who's a medical student at Jefferson. It's a really interesting read because you get some real confirmation of where we here on the show have been saying healthcare is actually headed in the future, and what I think many of us are, hopefully anyway, starting to experience already with our own healthcare providers. There has been a change, at least I've noticed it. And that is more of an interest in meeting the non-directly healthcare related issues, work and life stuff. In other words, typically the way it used to work, you walk into a doctor's office, he or she asks for your symptoms, they ask you a bunch of questions, and then they prescribe some sort of treatment. It was almost always in an office, and the conversation was pretty much one way. They ask questions, you answer, and with little attention very often to anything outside of your symptoms. Real communication, according to the people who were interviewed, Klasko and Rahman, real communication about your life and your job and so forth were kind of non-existent, and yet may have been real contributors to your health. So millennials and others, to be honest, are looking to turn this around within our healthcare system. Millennials, being more social, if not more socially conscious anyway, put a greater store in honest, upfront communication kind of in all aspects of their life, and is true in healthcare as well. So when asked about the loss of connection with the consumer, the patient, medical student Nishad Rahman quoted 19th century Canadian physician William Osler, who said, quote, "It's more important to know what type of patient has the disease than what type of disease a patient has. And to do that," says Rahman, "you have to make sure that you build relationships with your patients instead of just prescribing drugs. We have to make sure that we are encouraging them," says Rahman. "We have to make them accountable and responsible and excited about taking control of their own health." Rahman really is talking about doctors taking a more holistic approach to medicine, looking at the big picture. And not just doctors, but patients as well, getting them interested in the process. And I think, and Rahman implies, that there is so much more to learn from a patient if that patient is volunteering information because they're involved, rather than just sitting there and waiting for the doctor to hopefully ask the right question. Mm-hmm. Because that's an issue. If the doctor doesn't ask the right question and the patient doesn't volunteer anything, stuff may be missed.
Sure,
if the patients become involved and they say, well, yeah, all those things you said, but also, I've kind of been a little depressed lately, or whatever, right? I mean, they volunteer. Now, for those type of doctors who have this holistic approach, and the healthcare designers, to get into the healthcare system is going to require quite a change in medical schools and what they teach. At Thomas Jefferson University, for instance, Rahman points out that there are actually classes on the clinical aspect of empathy.
Makes perfect sense.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it does.
There's also classes on understanding the business, the medical business, and how business can affect healthcare in the future. So teaching empathy and business and communication technology and technology in general, not just memorizing the Krebs cycle or organic compounds. That is what Klasko and Raman are really talking about. And I mentioned memorizing the Krebs cycle. Jefferson President Klasko said this regarding the place of automation and computers and how medical schools choose students, how medical schools choose their students. Klasko says this: there's no human brain on the planet that can memorize everybody's genomic sequence. So the whole thing of choosing people like Nishad Raman just based on the fact that they can memorize the Krebs cycle is ridiculous. When you think about it, the role of the doctor is going to be around communication. It's going to be around observation versus seeing. Sounds a little bit like Ono. At the end of the day, we can't continue to select and educate doctors the same way that we have for the past 50 years. And then Raman piles onto that. Following that same question, Raman says this: if you have a highly intelligent person who's gifted in the sciences but has no empathy, that's the type of person that can be accepted into medical school right now because of his or her MCAT scores or organic chemistry scores, says Raman. And this is a good one. We'll put the slide up here for you. Raman also says this: empathy is not part of that selection process at all. There are very few cases, almost none, where you need to know organic chemistry to be an effective doctor. I can't imagine a case that's true unless you're in research. So the idea that that's the category that we're using to select people is absurd. This is a great article. There's a lot more in there. They also deal with, the slow uptake of communication technologies in healthcare, the idea of video communication with patients, which they could have done 10 years ago via Skype, is only just now being rolled out, in a lot of healthcare organizations. The hospitality portion of the hospital, Klasko has some great things to say about that. He actually wants hospitality organizations to take over that part of the hospital. Let the healthcare guys do what they're good at doing, and let the hospitality folks, that's accommodations, food in the lake, do what they're good at. Really good stuff. I encourage you to go out and read the article. It's really fascinating reading in my mind.
It is, and what I thought about when you were saying that, you mentioned Ono. I mean, this idea of lean healthcare is a prevalent thing now. And when you were talking about that, you're talking about the doctors, being this top-down, and the patients are basically just listening and following. It reminds me of the old school style of management and manufacturing, where the workers would have no say. They just would follow whatever the manager said. It's very similar to that, where it's a culture of a two-way, top-down and bottom-up approach, where you're a team. You're a team to either ensure your own health care if you're a patient, or to ensure that the manufacturing is done properly. It's not just the responsibility of the ones on top.
And I think we've all had this experience of at some point or another going into the doctor, talking about what's wrong, and the doctor's asking questions, and you're answering them. Yeah. But there's this feeling that he's
not getting it.
He's not. Yeah. I don't. This.
Why are you asking me that?
Yeah. And there may be valid reasons, but to take part in the conversation then really is, number one, is going to give you a better feeling that the doctor does have a route, but you also may convey some information to him that goes aha.
Absolutely. That's the key thing. Great stuff. Knowledge of Wharton always has great stuff.
Knowledge of Wharton,
Really good stuff. All right, thanks, Eric. Well, we're now officially in the autumn. I believe we've passed September 22nd, right? So that means we're in autumn now.
There we go.
And that also means we're drawing ever closer to one of the really important reveals of the year for those of us in the quality profession, which is the announcement of the 2016 Baldrige Award winners coming up here, I believe in late November is usually when they announce the Baldrige winners. Well, for those of you who don't know, those of us that don't know, the Baldrige is the nation's only presidential award for performance excellence. Begun in 1987, the program has honored manufacturers, service providers, healthcare institutions, transactional organizations, and small businesses. Getting the Baldrige is a rigorous undertaking, and the examiners who really basically decide who's going to win a Baldrige, they're professionals. They have deep knowledge and experience in the science and art of quality. Here in the 2016 Baldrige cycle, 34 organizations applied for the award. Now, just 15 of those were awarded site visits, as we learned last month. And from those in-depth on-site visits and the hours upon hours spent with interviews and analysis and discussions that are going to follow, all that will emerge the examiners reaching an agreement on who's going to win a Baldrige Award here for a to-be-determined number of companies. It's always different. I mean, it could be 2, it could be 1, it could be 5. I mean, there's been, I think, 102 Baldrige winners since '87, so that works out like 3 or 4 a year. Yeah. So it'll be somewhere in that.
Yeah,
that
basically,
ballpark,
if you meet their standard, you win.
You're going to win. There's no predetermined number.
Be awarded. I'm sorry, it's not really something you win.
Right. Exactly. And we're going to get to that.
Yeah.
Because, once an organization has been awarded a Baldrige, they're part of an exclusive club, and the members of that club are committed to spreading the word about the power of the continuous improvement journey. And as per that mission, the Baldrige Regional Conference held in Dallas last week offered attendees a chance to interact with Lisa Muller, who's the Assistant Superintendent at Jenks Public Schools in Oklahoma, and they're a 2005 Baldrige winner. In the article Baldrige and the Challenges Facing Public Schools, which appeared in Tuesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily, author and Baldrige education team member Dawn Marie Bailey describes a recent conversation that she had with Muller about Jenks's remarkable journey of excellence. And one of the first things that Muller mentions refers to the fact that, as you mentioned, it's not really the award. It's not really a journey with an end. It's a journey without an end. Right. As an example, Muller points out that the Jenks School District used the Baldrige criteria to help identify and develop their core competencies. Now, this is great by itself, but what's really eye-opening is that the concept of developing core competencies wasn't introduced in the language of the Baldrige until after they had received their Baldrige Award in 2005. So, of course, Muller and her team did not see winning the award as the object or endpoint of their efforts. In other words, they're using stuff that happened after they won the Baldrige, after they were awarded the Baldrige, because they see value in the entire thing. In the interview, Muller also mentioned some other interesting things. They're using the criteria as much on the operational side of their organization as they are on specifically improvement in education. In other words, translating this for any kind of an organization, it can help you with your manufacturing processes as much as it can with the betterment of your actual production of the thing, whatever it is you're doing. So it helps you with the process and the end result of what you're processing. And the other thing she says is, don't get hung up on the program as much as doing it, what you're going to name the program. At the beginning of their journey, Muller and their team at Jenks first defined this process as TQE, Total Quality Education, which was a legacy quality improvement program, but there was a lot of pushback. People really didn't like that before, so overcoming that, they had to kind of get through that first before they could get to the Baldrige program. And finally, cross-functional training is really important. They use cross-functional teams, and everyone, of course, is invested. They have different ways of doing things and bring their own unique skills and experience. So, again, the Baldrige 2016 winners are going to be announced here in less than 2 months, and we'll bring you that news when it's announced, and we're going to look forward to more great stories from Baldrige winners. It's always interesting to hear what the Baldrige winners have to say about their improvement.
Well, and you're right. Most of them don't see it, I mean, at least all the ones we've talked to, they don't see it just as, oh, we've won it. That's it. It's more like, okay, no, we're committed, because it does take a lot of commitment. We're committed to it. Now we're going to keep it going. We're going to keep trying to continuously improve and build on the progress that we've made so far.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Yep.
All right. Okay, so if you are already registered to ISO 9001-2008 or ISO 14001, you know that you have until September 2018 to transition to the new ISO 9001-2015, and the same is true for ISO 14001-2015. So what are companies doing to get ready for the transition? What do you need to do to get ready for the transition? That was the subject of the article ISO 9001-2015 and ISO 14001-2015, Dealing with Deadlines, written by our next guest, Chad Keimel, CTO and founder of Omnex. In the article, Chad covers some of the key changes to the standards as well as strategies for making the transition. Chad is with us this morning on the phone to talk to us about some of those changes. Hi, Chad.
Hey, hi, Dirk. Hi, Mike and Dirk. How are you?
Oh, pretty good.
Thanks, Chad.
So, just right up front, what are the important deadlines? We mentioned when there's the kind of the drop dead deadline, which is in September 2018. But what are some of the other important deadlines that people need to mark on their calendars for that transition?
Dirk, thinking about September, they should actually add 4 months before that. So typically what happens is there's about a 3-month non-conformance cycle, and then there's about a month in terms of what is called a certification decision a registrar makes. So best bet for companies, so they don't lose their certification, is make sure that your audit doesn't take any later than June. So you have June, July, August, and remember, it's September 3rd. Anyway, the date I will give in our webinar next week. But so keep that in mind. It's actually June 2018. Now let's fast forward to next year. So many people like AS9100 has a deadline of June. To pass June 2017, all audits will be to the new AS9100D.
Wow, okay.
Automotive, by the way, IATF 16949, by the way, you know, it's coming out October 1st. Let me be the first to let everyone know. And it's got a deadline that of October of 2017. So AS9100 June and automotive IATF 16949 has got an October deadline. By the way, I'm doing a webinar on that on October 7th. That will be, you know, people interested should look at the Omnex website for that.
Okay.
And similar, talk to your registrar. You know, there are deadlines for, you know, your sector, yourself. You know, nobody wants everyone to go in the very end. We're all hoping companies start looking and start transitioning today. So
Chad,
folks, don't wait. Yeah.
Do you think that most companies are prepared for this transition at this point?
You know, we're seeing a fair amount of activity at you know, the training and the classes and the gap analysis we're doing. But really, I think a lot of people have not taken a serious look. It behooves everyone, you know, folks, don't wait till the very end. Get trained, get your gap analysis out of the way, put your implementation plans together. We'll tell you a lot more about that next week. You know, there's a lot of strategies they can think about there.
Well, Chad, in your opinion, let me jump in here because I wanted to ask you this. This is, I think, a key question is, what do you think is going to be the single biggest challenge for these companies when they make this transition?
You know, this is across the board. You know, whether it's automotive or AS9100 or ISO 9001 2015 or ISO 14001 2015, the biggest challenge is going to really be how do you do context, interested party expectations, and the risk-based thinking. Let me lump it together because we think of it as one process at Omnex, as a business operating system process that we talk about and we teach. So I think that's going to be the biggest challenge.
Okay, and you know, towards the end of your article, you get into ISO 14001 for a little bit, and you mention culture change within ISO 14001 and how that might be a big deal for companies. Can you just describe a little bit about 14001 and culture change and why this is a big deal? Yes.
You know, especially 14001, I'll say, there's also an ISO 9001 component, which we'll just ignore for now. In ISO 14001, Dirk, there's two things happening. They've added the word protecting the environment right to the EMS policy. So that requires us to maybe, you know, enlarge what we think of as EMS, put in our sustainability initiatives also together, maybe with social responsibility. That's point number one, is the larger scope that people need to adopt. Item number two, which is the biggest culture issue, is anytime we go work with companies, ISO 14001 sometimes is handled by one person. And really, it is not spread out throughout the company, the idea of environmental understanding. That is a change that the standard is looking for, you know, people involvement across the board in the company. Third is the expanded leadership, where now top management is accountable. all three of this put together, I think, is going to be the culture change, and really what, especially for environmental management systems, companies will have to tussle with.
Okay. Well, Chad Keimel, founder and CTO of Omnex, thanks for joining us this morning. And you can join Chad and myself in a webinar next week on this topic, everything Chad was just talking about and a whole bunch more. The webinar is Implementing ISO 9001 2015 and ISO 14001 2015. And that is this coming Thursday, that's October 6th. At 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. You're going to want to tune into that. So link out to his article down below, and there's links out to the registration page.
That's right.
Also, you should have gotten emails on that as well. So thanks, Chad, for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Dirk. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks,
Take
Chad.
care, guys.
Yep.
We'll see you next week. Thanks, Chad.
Cool.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one. I mean, Chad's done a few webinars with us, and he's always a great presenter. He's very, very knowledgeable about, as you can guess from there.
Yeah, and
standards.
not just 9001 and 14001, but also he is familiar with the AS 9100
TS,
and the 169. Not 169. The ISO TS.
TS, yeah.
1694. Yeah, that's
the automotive.
The automotive one.
ISO TS 16949.
Yeah, thank
That's
you.
it. There we go. I knew it was something. It was on the tip of my brain.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks, Chad, and thanks, Dirk. Good. It's gonna be good. Dirk's hosting that one too, so make sure you check that one out. And yeah, as we said, it'll be in your email. You can check it out in Chad's article as well. Alrighty. Well, in a discipline, Dirk, and you know this, in a discipline like quality assurance, the idea of a fixed truth, of any one single fixed truth, is really, I think you could even call it seductive. It's this goal, right? I mean, undertakings such as statistical process control and root cause analyses and corrective and preventive actions, among many others, they all revolve around this idea that the truth is out there, just like they said in the X-Files, right? The truth is out there, and it's our job to go out and find it, right? And once we know for certain the true nature of our process or our strategy or our culture, whatever it may be, only then can we take the proper actions to improve it. So I mean, this idea of truth is an important element for what we do as quality professionals, what all of you do out there as quality professionals. But if we step back a little bit and we let the intuition and imagination, located in the right hemisphere of our brains, right over here, run free, we'll see and maybe begin to understand a bigger question than what is the truth? Like maybe, is there truth at all? Right? Is there anything such thing as truth? And that's maybe a little bit too philosophical for quality assurance, but I thought it was pretty interesting. And those are some of the thoughts that I took away from David Schwinn's article, Quality Transformation, A Journey Towards Truth, which appeared in Monday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. You can see it right there. Well, Schwinn's articles appearing in QDD, they've been appearing in our media for a few years now. They're always very personal. They're always very heart-centric. He's an engineer by training, so he's got plenty of the left brain mojo going. I talked about left now, right? He's got plenty of that left brain mojo going on, but he's also, and I don't use this word often, but he's also a true humanist. And he understands that people, not systems or processes or theory, are what really makes an organization go. This piece is a perfect example of all that. He kind of walks his way through the nature of truth through his own personal prism of very heartfelt experiences. And I want to kind of run through some of them because I think it was illuminating. During adolescence, Schwinn was exposed to a kind of what you could call maybe like a perfect truth. And maybe it's one that many of us have experienced. Learned from his parents, his family, his church, and his teachers. And again, for many of us, youth is a time of blacks and whites and the simplicity of knowing what is absolutely true or absolutely false. And that's very comforting for all of us usually as we're children. But with age, of course, comes shades of gray, and many of his accepted truths began to come into conflict with others as he got older. He graduated from college and began an engineering career that took him to GM and Ford and other places, and to personal contacts with thought leaders like W. Edwards Deming and Peter Senge. These conflicts became broader and more troubling as he kind of began to interact with these people, these philosophers really, of quality and of process. And he began to see that some of what he thought were truths weren't necessarily so true, and he began to have some kind of crises of confidence as we went through that. Now, he had built a career on data analysis and facts, but systems thinking, which he came to kind of later in his career, showed him that everything is perception, and that even the so-called rocks, he uses the term rocks, that we held as inalterably true were open for debate, or at least different interpretations from others. That's interesting. Or
at least should be examined, and not just
taken as true. This is the core of what he's saying here. Ultimately, Schwinn has come to realize that truth is inherently found within us, and that which is true for us may not be true for someone else, but that doesn't make it any less true for us. That's a really key takeaway here. Yeah, it's true for us, maybe not true for you, but it still doesn't make, even though it's not true for you, doesn't mean it's not true for me at the same time. And we honor each other, we honor ourselves by not forcing our truths on one another. And that's why Schwinn starts and ends this particular column with a favorite phrase of his, what I believe to be true is. He says that a lot. He says at the beginning, at the end of the column, he says this is a quote that he uses a lot in his life, what I believe to be true is. What he's and think about that, parse that sentence for a minute. What he's saying is not that the truth is this, you should believe that, or I think this is what's going on. He's saying, I believe this is true. This feels right to me. Doesn't mean I won't change my mind later. Doesn't mean you should believe that way. It means I believe this is true right now. And I'm comfortable saying that. That's a really powerful place to sit, if you think about it, in terms of interacting with what is true and what is not. There's another piece of this that was interesting to me, and maybe, I don't know, maybe not interesting to anybody else, but did you ever watch a movie called Rashomon?
No.
Okay. Rashomon is a movie, I don't know if any of you out there, it's a rather obscure movie. It's been referred to by many great Hollywood directors. It was directed by the great Akira Kurosawa in 1950, Japanese movie. I remember 1950 is just 5 years after the war, just 5 years after the atomic bombs were dropped on Japan. So there's, Kurosawa's early work is infused with this element of almost doom, of wondering about truth. And Rashomon is a great example of this. Just to give a quick brief on the movie, basically an event happens in the woods. There's a crime, there's a rape, and the perpetrators, this is medieval Japan, the perpetrators are dragged into medieval court, into a regional court, and the judge asks questions and they present what happened. And there's a few different characters that are presenting what happened with this event. And it's the same event, but it's a little different as each person describes it. Yeah. And the point is that there isn't truth. There is no truth. I mean, remember, Japan had just been bombed with atomic weapons 5 years before. There's no absolutes. There's no blacks and whites. There's only grays, and everything is perception. And that's what I think Schwinn is saying in this article as the same thing. That's what I thought about was Rashomon. This idea that there's room for various truths within the human brain, the human soul, and understanding that and fitting that into our lives with each other is what makes us human. And it also is what, I mean, to take us back to organizational philosophy, it's what makes organizations work. I mean, when you're managing within an organization, there's a delicate balance here between having a unified vision for your team and also allowing those unique perspectives from the individuals to come up and work against that or work with it. And striking that balance in the right way is really, it's kind of the art of management is what that comes down to, is how you do that when you lead a team. And truth is really important. I mean, I don't want to say truth doesn't, I mean, to me, truth exists. Yeah. I think most of us would say there is truth. But again, his point is, what you say is truth isn't what I say necessarily is truth, and that's okay. That's okay.
I guess the way I look at it is, there is truth. And whatever your context is, when you want to talk at a moral or religious or engineering or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
The truth is there. I mean, there is something that is right. But the best any of us can do is try to steer ourselves toward it. And I might believe, well, this is the path to truth, and I'm pretty certain I'm right. Yeah. I hope, but I'm human. I could be wrong. Yeah. You think, well, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I think the path to this truth is this direction. And I think it's recognizing that we're all working within with a limitation of our human brain and stuff, and we got to accept that we're doing the best we can. And be open to, well, maybe we're wrong.
Yeah. And there's actually, it's crazy, there's deeper physics to this too. If you think about it, string theory says that a molecule can be in two places at once, right? Schrodinger's cat, right, is the example of that. And that's really the same thing, is the idea that truth is inherent, it is composed within the human brain. We perceive what's true. There's just an article about the nature of time, which was talking about this on Yahoo I read a couple days ago, where scientists now say that there may not be a universal time. Time may just really exist as inherently as a perception within the human brain. It's interesting to think about these things, but and I guess that's kind of deep and philosophical, but it ties in with what Schwinn is saying, is that perception is what makes things true. And we agree on a scientific nature of truth. Right. And we agree when we're engineers working on a project that this is going to be accepted as true. We have to. in order to get work done.
You mentioned Schrodinger's cat. I'm not sure if I got this joke right, but a guy walks into a library. He says, "I'm looking for a book on Pavlov and also on Schrodinger." And the librarian says, "Well, the first one rings a bell, but I'm not sure where it's at."
Yeah, that's good. Think about that one. It's very deep, people.
Okay.
I hope our tweet can match up with that.
Exactly. And now it is time for the tweet of the week. Those thought-provoking, silly, or unintelligible 140-character missives that usually cause your phone to ring at about 2:30 in the morning.
Yep.
This one is from AMS Pandian, who tweets, 2009, he was rejected by Twitter and Facebook. 2014, he sold his company WhatsApp to Facebook for $28.8 billion. And he's, of course, talking about WhatsApp co-founder Brian Acton, who, along with Jan Koum, started WhatsApp, which is a cross-platform mobile messaging app.
$21.8 billion?
Yeah, so first of all, they're not hired. It was Brian Acton. He applied for a job at Twitter and was turned down. He applied for a job at Facebook and was turned down. So he and Jan Koum created their own app, and 4 years later sold it, $21.8 billion. So the moral of that story is,
I don't know what the moral of that story is. I can't even process that. I'm still thinking about Schrodinger's cat. Yeah. So, in any event, all right, thanks, Dirk. There's your tweet of the week. All right, well, that's our show for this week. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Chad Keinwell, for joining us today. And don't forget, Omnex is a webinar that Chad will be presenting this Thursday, October 6th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, implementing ISO 9001:2015 and ISO 14001:2015. Chad will be presenting that, and Dirk will be hosting and asking him lots of questions. So be sure to check out your inbox for that, sign up for it, and join us on Thursday.
That's right. So thanks you all for joining us, and we will see you next week.
Next week. Have a great weekend. Yep. Bye.